What if an ordinary copper coin you have seen countless times holds a story and a value that most people never notice? For generations, the Lincoln wheat penny has been the cornerstone of American coin collecting. Millions of people have saved these iconic pennies in old jars, inherited cigar boxes, and forgotten bankrolls, believing they hold a piece of history. Yet, a vast divide exists between sentimental keepsakes and genuine numismatic treasures. Today, we are taking a closer look at three specific Lincoln wheat pennies that quietly circulated through mid-century America. At first glance, they might appear to be nothing more than common pocket change, but a closer inspection reveals how historical significance, striking characteristics, and exceptional preservation can transform a seemingly ordinary cent into a highly sought-after collectible. As this examination unfolds, you will discover what separates a penny worth mere cents from an authenticated example that commands serious attention from advanced numismatists. You will learn the critical details experts evaluate, what verified high-grade examples have achieved in the competitive marketplace, and why the true value of these coins is determined by far more than just their age. Experienced collectors rarely dismiss a wheat penny based solely on its date. Instead, they slow down, rotate the coin beneath adequate lighting, study the lettering, examine the texture of the surfaces, and pay close attention to details that most people overlook. That careful inspection is exactly what transforms an ordinary piece of pocket change into a fascinating numismatic investigation. 1946. Lincoln wheat penny. The story of the 1946 Lincoln wheat penny begins during a profound era of transition for the United States. World War II had just concluded, and the nation was rapidly shifting from wartime production back to peacetime prosperity. During the most intense years of the war, specifically in 1943, the United States Mint was forced to produce pennies in zinc-coated steel to conserve critical copper supplies needed for military ammunition and communications equipment. Following that, from 1944 to 1900, the Mint utilized recycled brass salvaged from spent artillery shells. By 1946, the Mint finally returned to the traditional pre-war bronze alloy. This composition consisted of exactly 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. This return to normalcy makes the 1946 issue particularly meaningful to collectors who appreciate the historical ebb and flow of American coinage. Millions of these pennies flooded the booming post-war economy, riding in the pockets of returning soldiers and passing through cash registers in a rapidly changing nation. The coin features Victor David Brenner's enduring obverse portrait of Abraham Lincoln, which was first introduced in 1909 to commemorate the centennial of his birth, paired with his classic reverse design featuring two stylized wheat stalks framing the denomination. Weighing precisely 3.11 grams and measuring 19.05 millimeters in diameter with a plain edge, the 1946 penny was struck in massive quantities to fuel a revitalized commercial sector. The Philadelphia Mint, producing coins without a mint mark beneath the date, struck hundreds of millions of pieces, ensuring that the coin remained a ubiquitous presence in everyday commerce. Such enormous mintage figures explain why the vast majority of surviving 1946 pennies remain easily obtainable today. However, absolute mintage tells only a fraction of the story. Experienced collectors know that finding a 1946 penny is simple, but finding one in truly exceptional condition is a formidable challenge. The overwhelming majority of these coins immediately entered circulation, where their highly reactive copper surfaces quickly acquired contact marks, discoloration, environmental damage, and noticeable wear across Lincoln's cheekbone, jawline, and the highest points of the wheat stalks on the reverse. Professional grading services evaluate surviving examples strictly on the internationally recognized Sheldon numerical scale, looking for unimpaired mint luster, sharp striking details, and original surface preservation. When grading copper coins, color designations are incredibly important. Coins are classified as brown, red-brown, or full red. A heavily worn brown example is generally worth only a few cents, serving as a modest historical souvenir rather than a financial asset. In stark contrast, coins that manage to escape circulation entirely and retain their original fiery mint brilliance are classified as full red examples. A certified mint state 67 full-wed 1946 penny, exhibiting a flawless strike and zero distracting marks, can attract significant collector demand. Under competitive auction conditions, these elite survivors often realize values between $250 and $500, depending heavily on eye appeal and population reports. Furthermore, specialized collectors rigorously examine these coins for recognized mint errors. While modern machinery produces highly consistent coinage, the massive post-war production run occasionally resulted in off-center strikes, clip-and planchets, and fascinating die breaks. When evaluating a 1946 penny, knowledgeable numismatists caution against confusing chemical cleaning with original luster. Harsh polishing strips away the microscopic flow lines created during the striking process, permanently ruining the coin's numismatic integrity and leaving an unnatural harsh shine that experienced buyers immediately reject. Truly valuable examples possess a natural, uninterrupted cartwheel luster that can only be preserved through decades of careful, untouched storage in inert archival environments. 1950, Lincoln Wheat Penny. 4 years later, the 1950 Lincoln Wheat Penny entered circulation in a country facing an entirely new set of global and domestic realities. The dawn of the 1950s brought the onset of the Korean War and the deepening tensions of the Cold War. Yet simultaneously, the American domestic economy was expanding at an unprecedented rate. The 1950 penny quietly facilitated millions of small daily transactions, from purchasing a morning newspaper to dropping a coin into a mechanical parking meter or a neighborhood vending machine. Struck at the Philadelphia Mint without a mint mark, this issue continued the traditional bronze composition of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, maintaining the standard 3.11-gram weight in plain edge that American citizens had trusted for decades. While the total mintage for the 1950 Philadelphia issue exceeded 272 million pieces, advanced collectors view this specific year with a highly critical eye. By 1950, the master hubs used to produce the working dies for the Lincoln cent had begun to show significant signs of wear and deterioration due to decades of continuous use. Consequently, many 1950 pennies exhibit a noticeable softness in the finer details, particularly in the parallel lines of the wheat ears on the reverse and the individual strands of Lincoln's hair on the obverse. This manufacturing reality makes finding a sharply struck, fully detailed 1950 penny an exciting pursuit for registry set competitors. When an evaluator examines this coin, the sharpness of the strike often determines whether the piece is merely average or genuinely exceptional. A weak strike cannot be improved, and coins lacking full definition will never reach the absolute highest tiers of professional grading, regardless of their lack of physical wear. Surface preservation is equally vital for the 1950 issue. Copper is highly sensitive, and decades of exposure to humidity, skin oils, and airborne contaminants cause the original bright red color to slowly darken or develop unappealing black carbon spots. Third-party grading organizations heavily penalize coins with distracting spots, uneven toning, or fingerprints etched into the metal. Therefore, a 1950 penny that has retained its full original red mint color for over 7 decades is a remarkable and statistically improbable survivor. While circulated examples in fine or very fine condition trade for just a few pennies over their face value, elite certified examples completely change the financial landscape of the hobby. A pristine mint state 67 red 1950 Lincoln cent, authenticated by a leading grading service and boasting exceptional strike quality that defies the worn master hubs of the era, can realize anywhere from $400 to $800 at auction. The premium placed on these top-tier coins relies entirely on their verified condition, superior eye appeal, and the intensity of bitter competition among collectors attempting to build the finest known sets. Beyond standard condition, variety hunters carefully inspect 1950 pennies for evidence of doubled dies, unusual die cracks, or retained cuds. While there is no universally famous, blockbuster error for the 1950 Philadelphia strike comparable to the legendary 1955 doubled die, genuine mint errors such as broad strikes, dramatic off-center strikes, or coins accidentally struck on silver dime planchets occasionally surface. These dramatic anomalies, when independently authenticated, can command impressive premiums in the thousands of dollars. However, responsible collectors are constantly reminded that the vast majority of anomalies found on everyday 1950 pennies are the result of post-mint damage, environmental corrosion, or worthless machine doubling that occurred during ejection from the coining press. Authentic mint errors are rare, which is exactly why they hold their value. For those discovering a brilliant 1950 penny in an old collection, proper handling is paramount. Professional numismatists strictly advise handling such coins only by their edges and storing them in rigid, acid-free holders to halt any further environmental degradation. 1957 D. Lincoln Wheat Penny. As the decade drew to a close, the 1957 D. Lincoln Wheat Penny marked the twilight of a legendary numismatic era. The wheat reverse design, which had served the United States faithfully since 1909, was nearing its final days, destined to be permanently replaced by the Lincoln Memorial design just 2 years later in 1959. Produced at the Denver Mint, as indicated by the small D Mint mark positioned squarely beneath the date on the obverse, this coin represents the absolute zenith of high-capacity minting technology of its time. The Denver facility struck an astonishing 1.05 billion pennies in 1957. This massive output was necessary to feed a consumer economy that was booming with suburban expansion, new interstate highways, and a rapidly growing population that required endless amounts of small change for daily commerce. Struck in the familiar 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin alloy, and weighing the standard 3.11 grams, the 1957 D penny is widely considered one of the most common wheat cents in existence today. Because of this monumental mintage, sheer age and historical nostalgia simply do not translate into high financial value for average circulated pieces. Countless Americans have a 1957 D penny sitting in a jar or drawer, completely unaware that in heavily worn brown condition, it holds virtually no premium and is worth only a few cents. However, this massive abundance makes the quest for absolute perfection even more fascinating for elite numismatists. When over a billion coins are struck at a rapid, relentless pace, quality control naturally fluctuates. The high-speed presses in Denver often utilize dies long past their prime, resulting in a large percentage of 1957 D pennies displaying weak strikes, mushy lettering, and heavy die flow lines radiating toward the rim. Finding a 1957 D penny with a fully struck portrait, crisp individual wheat lines, and blazing original red luster is a statistical anomaly. It is this exact rarity of condition that drives the high-end collector market. Professional graders scrutinize these late-era wheat cents under intense magnification. They look closely for the absence of contact marks, commonly known as bag marks, which were inevitably inflicted when millions of freshly struck coins were dumped into massive canvas bags and transported across the country by rail and armored truck. A 1957 D penny that somehow avoided these heavy impacts, escaped the canvas bags unscathed, and remained safely sequestered away from light and moisture, can achieve the highly coveted Mint State 67 red designation. At this elite level of preservation, a coin from a billion-piece mintage can suddenly command values approaching 300 to 600 at competitive auctions. The stark discrepancy between a 3-cent circulated coin and a $500 certified gem perfectly illustrates the core philosophy of modern coin collecting. Condition is everything. Furthermore, the immense production run in Denver created highly fertile ground for die varieties. Collectors meticulously examine the mint mark area of the 1957 D penny for repunched mint marks, where the D was stamped into the working die more than once, leaving a slightly offset secondary image hidden beneath or beside the primary letter. While minor repunching is relatively common, dramatic and easily visible repunched mint marks are recognized varieties that can attract modest premiums from specialized collectors. Additionally, dramatic and undeniable errors like severe off-center strikes or coins struck on wrong metal planchets exist from this year and require strict third-party authentication to verify their legitimacy and value. The journey of the Lincoln Wheat Penny through these mid-century issues is a testament to the endurance of American design and the fascinating complexities of numismatics. Whether it is a 1946 penny symbolizing post-war recovery, a 1950 issue reflecting a booming mid-century economy, or a 1957 D Representing the final massive output of a beloved design, each coin tells a historical story. The ultimate lesson these coins offer is that extraordinary value rarely comes simply from age or a common date. Lasting numismatic worth is born from the remarkable intersection of historical context, impeccable originality, verified professional grading, and the disciplined research of collectors who know exactly what hidden details to look for.